The moment Dante Caruso heard a child's voice on his private line, every instinct screamed trap, until she said 5 words that ripped his chest open. I just wanted to talk. His daughter used to say the exact same thing from her hospital bed, and she'd been dead for 3 years. Now he was standing outside a rundown house with an army of men, staring at a window where a terrified little girl watched him back, and he had to make a choice. Walk away like he should, or protect her like he couldn't protect his own daughter, even if it meant going to war with every enemy who'd traced that call. The house smelled like cinnamon candles and old carpet, the kind of smell that clings to places where people try hard but never quite have enough. 7-year-old Rosie Bennett sat on the kitchen floor, her knees pulled to her chest, surrounded by a fortress of stuffed animals arranged in a perfect circle. Mr. Whiskers the cat, Bella the bunny, and Freddy the frog, her council, she called them. I think, she announced to the circle, we should call someone. Mr. Whiskers, a gray tabby with one missing button eye, said nothing. But in Rosie's mind, he was the wise one. He always agreed with her best ideas. Her mama was at work again. The 3rd double shift this week. Rosie had memorized the rhythm by now. Wake up alone, cereal from the box, cartoons until the TV started repeating shows, then silence. So much silence it made her ears ring. The landline phone hung on the wall like a challenge. Her mama had told her 100 times, only call 911 or grandma. That's it, baby. You understand. But grandma lived 4 states away and didn't like to talk long because of her phone bill. Rosie stood, her pink socks sliding slightly on the linoleum. She reached up and pulled the receiver down, the spiral cord bouncing. The dial tone buzzed like a trapped bee. Just one call, she whispered. Just to hear someone say hello. Her finger hovered over the buttons. She started pressing numbers. Random ones. A game. Like a treasure hunt, but for voices. She giggled as the phone began to ring. 1 ring. 2. Then, speak. Rosie froze. The voice wasn't friendly. It was deep, sharp, and cold like winter wind cutting through a crack in the door. Her mouth went dry. Hello? Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Then, who is this? Her hands trembled. She almost hung up. But something, maybe loneliness, maybe stubborn hope, kept her on the line. I'm Rosie, she whispered. I think I called the wrong number. Across the city, in a glass tower that scraped the belly of storm clouds, Dante Caruso stood in an office that smelled like leather and gunpowder. He was a man carved from stone and shadow. 43 years old. 6'3". A scar that ran from his left eyebrow to his jaw, a gift from a rival who no longer breathed. His empire stretched across the city's veins. Docks, clubs, backroom deals that kept elected officials in his pocket. People feared his name. They crossed the street when his cars passed. But none of that mattered when he was alone. His penthouse was immaculate. Expensive art on the walls. A dining table that sat 12. Silence so thick it pressed against his chest like a weight. He'd had a family once. A wife. A daughter. Both gone. The wife left. The daughter. He poured himself a drink, his jaw tight. His daughter, Isabella, had been taken by leukemia at age 6. 3 years ago now. But the grief was fresh, sharp as broken glass every single day. He never spoke of her. Not to his men. Not to anyone. His private line, reserved for emergencies, for threats, for blood business, sat on his desk. It never rang unless the world was on fire. Until tonight. The phone buzzed. Dante's eyes narrowed. He picked it up without hesitation. Speak. The voice that answered wasn't one of his men. It was small. Fragile. Young. Hello? His entire body went rigid. Who is this? He demanded, his voice darkening. I'm Rosie. I think I called the wrong number. His breath caught. A child. A little girl. His mind raced. Was this a message? A taunt from an enemy? Some sick psychological game? How did you get this number? His words came out like bullet. I pressed buttons. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bother you. Her voice wavered. She was scared. Dante's heart, something he thought had calcified into useless muscle, twisted painfully. Where are you? He asked, his tone shifting, quieter now but no less intense. Home. My mama's at work. I just wanted to talk to someone. I'm sorry. She hung up. The line went dead. Dante stood there, the phone still pressed to his ear, his pulse thundering. A child. Alone. Calling strangers. His men watched him from across the room, confused by the expression on his face. Trace it, Dante said quietly. Boss. Trace that call. Now. What happened next would change 3 lives forever. If you're already hooked, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss how this story unfolds. The trace took 4 minutes. Dante's tech specialist pulled up the address on a glowing screen. Residential. East Side. Maple Street. Name on the file is Bennett. Laura Bennett. Single mother. Works at Mason's Diner. 1 child. Daughter, age 7. Rosie Ann Bennett. Rosie. The name settled in Dante's chest like a stone. Get the cars, Dante said, his voice low. Boss, it's just a kid. Probably a prank or... Dante's gaze cut to him, sharp as a blade. I said get the cars. Within minutes, a convoy of 5 black SUVs rolled out of the underground garage. Dante sat in the back of the lead vehicle, his jaw tight, his mind racing. He told himself this was strategy. Caution. In his world, coincidences didn't exist. But beneath the logic, something else churned. A small voice. Fragile. Alone. I just wanted to talk to someone. Rosie had gone back to her stuffed animals, trying to forget the scary man on the phone. She arranged them in a new pattern, a star this time instead of a circle, and hummed a song her mama sang when she was sad. Then she heard it. A low rumble. Distant at first, then growing louder. She stopped humming. The rumble became a growl. Engines. Multiple engines. Rosie moved to the window and peeked through the thin curtains. Her heart stopped. Black cars. Big ones. Shiny and sleek like the ones in movies. They rolled down her street slowly, deliberately, their headlights cutting through the twilight like searchlights. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They stopped. Right in front of her house. Rosie stumbled backward, her breath coming in short gasps. Mr. Whiskers tumbled from her arms. Mama, she whispered, though no one was there to hear. Car doors opened in unison. Men stepped out. Tall men in dark suits, their faces hard, their movements sharp and coordinated. They didn't look at the neighbors. They looked at her house. The biggest car, the one in the center, remained closed. Then, slowly, the back door opened. A man stepped out. Tall. Broad-shouldered. A long coat that moved like a shadow. Even from the window, Rosie could feel the weight of him. The danger. He looked directly at her window. And for a moment the entire world held its breath. Dante stood on the cracked sidewalk, his eyes locked on the small house before him. Peeling paint. A sagging porch. A yard with patchy grass and a rusty bike tipped on its side. Curtains that had seen too many washes. This wasn't a setup. This wasn't strategy. This was poverty. Struggle. Survival. His men fanned out, their presence transforming the quiet street into a war zone. Neighbors peeked through blinds. Porch lights flickered on. His second-in-command, Victor, stepped beside him. You want us to go in? No. Dante's voice was firm. I go alone. Boss, we don't know what's inside. Could be. It's a child, Victor. Could be bait. Dante's jaw tightened. Stay here. Watch the perimeter. No one gets close. He moved toward the house, his footsteps deliberate, each one echoing in the silence. Inside, Rosie pressed herself against the wall, her small body shaking violently. The man was coming. She could see his shadow growing longer as he climbed the porch step. Please, she whimpered to her stuffed animals scattered on the floor. Please make him go away. A knock. Heavy. Slow. 3 times. Rosie clamped her hands over her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. Another knock. Then a voice. Deep. Controlled. Rosie. She froze. He knew her name. I'm not here to hurt you, the voice continued. I just want to talk. Her chest heaved. She wanted to believe him. But her mama always said, don't open the door for strangers. Ever. Please, she called out, her voice cracking. Please go away. I didn't mean to call you. I'm sorry. Silence. Then, softer now, I know you didn't. Something in his tone shifted. The sharpness dulled. The coldness warmed. Are you alone? He asked. Rosie hesitated. Mama said never tell strangers you're alone. My mama's coming home soon, she lied. Another pause. Okay, the man said quietly. I'll wait. Wait. Rosie's voice pitched higher. Why? Because a little girl shouldn't be alone. And because... His voice faltered. Because I need to make sure you're safe. Rosie didn't understand. Why would a scary man care if she was safe? She crept toward the door, her hand hovering over the lock. Who are you? She whispered. Through the door, Dante closed his eyes. Who was he? A killer. A criminal. A man drenched in blood and sin. But that's not what he said. Someone who lost a little girl once, he answered, his voice barely audible. And I won't let it happen again. The sound of a car engine, different from the others, sputtering and tired, cut through the tension. Dante turned. A beat-up sedan with a dented bumper pulled onto the street, slowing as the driver registered the wall of black SUVs blocking her house. The car jerked to a stop. A woman burst out, her diner uniform still on, a name tag that read Laura, pinned crookedly to her chest. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, her face exhausted but sharpening rapidly into terror. Rosie! She ran. Dante's men moved to intercept, but he raised a hand. They froze. Laura reached the porch, her eyes wild, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She put herself between Dante and the door, her body trembling but her stance defiant. Get away from my daughter, she hissed. Dante studied her. Mid-30s maybe. Thin from skipped meals, not gyms. Hands rough from work. Eyes that had seen too much disappointment but still fought. A mother. A protector. Your daughter called me, Dante said evenly. Laura's face went pale. She's 7. She doesn't know what she's doing. This, she gestured at the cars, the men, this is insane. In my world, Dante replied quietly, nothing happens by accident. Well, in my world, Laura shot back, little girls make mistakes. And grown men don't show up with an army because of a wrong number. Behind the door, Rosie's small voice called out, Mama! Laura's expression cracked. She fumbled with her keys, her hands shaking. Dante bent and picked them up. Their eyes met. For a moment, Laura saw something unexpected in his face. Not cruelty. Not threat. Grief. He handed her the keys without a word. She snatched them and unlocked the door. Rosie stood in the hallway, tears streaming down her cheeks, clutching Mr. Whiskers. Baby! Laura dropped to her knees and pulled her daughter into her arms. You're okay. You're okay. Rosie sobbed into her mother's shoulder. I'm sorry, Mama. I just wanted to talk to someone. I didn't know. Shoo. It's okay. It's not your fault. Laura looked up at Dante, her eyes blazing. You got what you came for. You see? She's a child. A lonely, innocent child. Now leave. Dante should have left. Every logical part of him said to walk away. But he didn't move. Ma'am, he said carefully, does your daughter make a habit of calling strangers? Laura stood, putting Rosie behind her. That's none of your business. It is if someone else gets that call. Someone who isn't restraining themselves. Laura's stomach twisted. She hadn't thought of that. The number she dialed, Dante continued, it's not public. It's encrypted. Private. Which means somehow she bypassed systems that cost me $250,000. He looked at Rosie, who peeked around her mother's legs. "That's not luck," he said. "That's not coincidence." Laura's breath caught. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying until I know how she reached me, and whether anyone else knows she did." His eyes hardened. "You're not safe." Laura slammed the door in his face. She locked it, bolted it, then dragged a chair under the handle. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Rosie stood in the hallway, her face streaked with tears. "Mama, I didn't mean to." "I know, baby. I know." Laura pulled her close. "You didn't do anything wrong." She moved to the window and peeked through the curtains. The black cars hadn't moved. The men stood like statues. And the tall man stood on her porch, staring at the door as if he could see through it. "Why isn't he leaving?" Rosie whispered. Laura didn't have an answer. Outside, Victor approached Dante. "Boss, we've been here 20 minutes. Neighbors are watching. Someone's going to call the cops." "Let them." Victor blinked. "What?" "I said let them." Dante's gaze didn't leave the door. "I'm not leaving until I know she's protected." "Protected from what?" Dante finally looked at him. "From me. From whoever else might come looking." Victor's brow furrowed. In all his years working for Dante Caruso, he'd never seen him like this. Unbalanced. Distracted. Haunted. "Boss," Victor said carefully, "is this about Isabella?" Dante's jaw clenched. "Don't. You can't replace." "I said don't." The words came out like a whip crack. Victor stepped back. Dante turned away, his chest tight. Isabella. His little girl. She'd been 6 when the diagnosis came. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. 6 months later, she was gone. And his wife, unable to bear the weight of the loss, left shortly after. Blamed him. Blamed his world. Maybe she was right. He'd buried himself in work. Expanded his empire. Eliminated rivals. Became untouchable. But none of it filled the void. And now, standing outside this broken-down house, listening to a little girl cry for her mother, every wound he'd tried to seal ripped open. "I just wanted to talk to someone." Isabella used to say the same thing during her hospital stays. "Daddy, can we just talk? I don't want to be alone." Dante closed his eyes, his fists clenching. He couldn't save his daughter. But maybe he could save this one. Inside, Laura's phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her hands shook as she answered. "Hello? Mrs. Bennett." It was him. "I need you to listen very carefully." "How did you get this number?" "The same way I get everything." His voice was calm. "I'm going to have my men sweep your property. Check for bugs, cameras, trackers. Then I'm going to post guards." "You're going to what?" "You don't have a choice." Laura's anger flared. "Like hell I don't. You can't just—" 3 hours ago, Dante interrupted, "your daughter accessed a line that's monitored by 5 different criminal organizations. If they trace it back to her—" He paused. "They won't knock politely like I did." The line went dead. Laura stood frozen, the phone trembling in her hand. Rosie tugged on her sleeve. "Mama? What did he say?" Laura looked down at her daughter and felt the world tilt beneath her feet. "He said," she whispered, "we're in danger." Laura didn't sleep that night. She sat on the couch with a baseball bat across her lap, watching the shadows move outside her window. The black cars remained. The men rotated shift. And somewhere in the darkness, she knew he was watching too. Rosie had finally fallen asleep around midnight, exhausted from crying. When dawn broke, pale and gray, Laura heard a knock. Different this time. Softer. She approached the door cautiously. "What?" "I brought breakfast." Dante's voice, muffled through the wood. Laura blinked. "What?" "Your daughter needs to eat. So do you." Against every instinct screaming at her to refuse, Laura opened the door a crack. Dante stood there holding 2 paper bags. The smell of fresh pancakes and bacon wafted through. He looked different in the morning light. Tired. The kind of tired that lives in the bones. "I'm not accepting charity from—" "It's not charity," Dante interrupted quietly. It's breakfast. Laura hesitated, then took the bag. Their fingers brushed. She pulled back quickly. Thank you, she muttered. She started to close the door, but a small voice stopped her. Is that the man from yesterday? Rosie stood in the hallway, her hair a mess, still in her pajamas with cartoon stars on them. Rosie, go back to. Hi, Rosie said, peeking around her mother's legs. Dante's entire demeanor shifted. The hard edges softened. Hello, Rosie. Did you really bring us breakfast? I did. Why? The question hung in the air. Dante crouched slowly, bringing himself to her eye level. Because I remember what it's like when someone forgets to. Rosie tilted her head. You have a big scar. Rosie. Laura gasped. But Dante's lips twitched. Almost a smile. I do. Does it hurt? Not anymore. Did someone mean to give it to you? Yes. That wasn't very nice. Something flickered across Dante's face. Surprise, pain, warmth. No. It wasn't. Rosie took a small step forward, still clutching Mr. Whiskers. Do you want to have breakfast with us? Rosie, he can't, Laura started. Please. Rosie's eyes were wide, hopeful. You brought it. You should stay. Laura looked at her daughter, then at the man who'd turned their lives upside down. Every rational part of her screamed no. But the part of her that saw her daughter smile for the first time in days whispered maybe. One breakfast, Laura said finally. Then you leave. Dante nodded slowly. One breakfast. They sat at the small kitchen table, a strange, impossible tableau. A mafia boss. A struggling mother. A lonely little girl. Rosie ate her pancakes with syrup dripping down her chin, chattering about her stuffed animals, her favorite cartoons, the gap in her teeth. Dante listened. Really listened. Asked questions. Laughed when she told him Freddy the Frog was in charge of security. That's a very important job, he said seriously. The most important, Rosie agreed. Laura watched, her coffee growing cold in her hand. She waited for the mask to slip, for the danger to show itself. But all she saw was a man who looked at her daughter the way she imagined fathers should, with attention, with care, with something that looked heartbreakingly like longing. You have a daughter, Laura said suddenly. The table went quiet. Dante's jaw tightened. Had. What happened? His eyes met hers. She saw past the scar, past the reputation. She saw a father drowning in grief. She got sick, he said quietly. And all my power, all my money, couldn't save her. Rosie reached across the table and patted his hand. I'm sorry you're sad. Dante stared at her small fingers on his scarred knuckles. And for the first time in 3 years, he let himself feel it. Not the rage. Not the emptiness. The love. Thank you, Rosie, he whispered. The piece shattered at 2:47 p.m. Laura was washing dishes when she heard the commotion outside. Raised voices, car doors slamming. She dropped the plate she was holding. It shattered in the sink. Through the window, she saw Dante surrounded by his men, their faces tense. Victor was holding a phone, speaking rapidly. Dante's expression went from controlled to furious in seconds. Laura's heart dropped. Dante turned toward the house, his eyes locking on hers through the window. He started walking toward the door. Laura moved fast, scooping Rosie up from where she was coloring. Mama, what's wrong? We're leaving. Now. The door burst open. Laura spun, clutching Rosie tight. Get out. But it wasn't Dante. It was 3 men she'd never seen before. Rough, hard, wrong. One grabbed her arm. Another reached for Rosie. Laura screamed. Then the world exploded. Dante came through the door like a storm, his fist connecting with the first man's jaw. The man dropped. The second pulled a gun. Down! Dante roared. Laura hit the floor, covering Rosie with her body. Gunfire. Shouting. The sounds of violence so close she could feel it. Then silence. Laura looked up, her ears ringing. 2 men lay unconscious. The third was being dragged out by Victor. and Dante stood in the center of her destroyed kitchen, chest heaving, blood on his knuckles. "Are you hurt?" he demanded. Laura couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Rosie was crying, sobbing into her mother's shoulder. "Are you hurt?" Dante asked again, his voice cracking. "No," Laura whispered. Then louder, angrier. "What the hell was that?" "Rivals. They traced the call. They came for leverage." "Leverage?" Laura's voice pitched to a scream. "She's a child." "I know." "No. You don't know." Laura stood, shaking. "You did this. You brought this to our door. I was protecting you. By making us a target?" The words hit like bullet. Dante stepped back as if physically struck. "Get out," Laura said, her voice breaking. "Get out and don't ever come back." "Laura! Get out!" Rosie's sobs filled the silence. Dante looked at the little girl, the one who'd smiled at him, who'd patted his hand, who'd reminded him what it felt like to be human. And he saw fear. Of him. His chest caved. Without another word, he turned and walked out. Laura slammed the door behind him and slid down to the floor, pulling Rosie into her arms. Outside, Dante stood on the porch, his hands shaking. Victor approached. "Boss, we need to relocate them. Safe house until—" "No." "But—" she said. "Leave." Dante's voice was hollow. "So we leave. They're still in danger. Then we protect them from a distance." He turned. Postmen on every corner. Eyes on the house 24/7. But no contact. As Dante walked to his car, he heard it through the door. Rosie's small voice. "Is he coming back, Mama?" And Laura's answer. "No, baby. He's not." Dante closed his eyes. Somehow this hurt most of all. 3 days passed. 3 days of silence. If you're still here, hit subscribe. You'll want to see how this impossible situation finds its way to hope. Laura barely left the house. She'd called in sick to work, couldn't bear to leave Rosie alone. She kept the curtains drawn, the doors locked, the baseball bat within reach. But every time she peeked through the blinds, she saw them. Not close. Not obvious. But there. Car on the corner. A man in a coffee shop across the street. Shadows that moved when she moved. He'd kept his word. Distance. But protection. Rosie hadn't been the same either. She'd grown quiet. Stopped playing. Stopped humming. She'd asked about him 17 times. "Is the man okay, Mama? Why did he leave? Did we make him sad?" Each question carved another piece out of Laura's heart. On the third night, after Rosie finally fell asleep, Laura sat at the kitchen table. The one where they'd shared breakfast, where Dante had laughed. The table she'd scrubbed 3 times to get the bloodstains out. Her hands trembled as she picked up her phone. She'd found his number in her call history. Her thumb hovered over it. "What are you doing, Laura?" He was dangerous. His world was violence. But he'd also brought breakfast. Listened to her daughter. Looked at Rosie with a tenderness that made Laura's chest ache. And when those men came, he'd put himself between them and her child without hesitation. She pressed call. It rang once. "Laura." His voice immediate. He'd been awake. Waiting. She closed her eyes. "Is she really still in danger?" Silence. Then, "Yes." "Because of you?" "Because of me." Laura's throat tightened. "Then why did you leave?" "Because you told me to." "And if I—" She stopped, her voice breaking. "If I asked you to come back?" The pause stretched so long she thought he'd hung up. Then, quietly, "Are you asking?" Dante sat in his car 2 blocks away, his phone pressed to his ear, his heart hammering. He'd spent 3 days in hell, watching from a distance, seeing Rosie's light dim, knowing he was the cause. His men thought he'd lost his mind. Maybe he had. "I don't know what I'm asking," Laura whispered. "Rosie won't stop crying. She won't eat. She thinks she did something wrong." Dante's eyes burned. "She didn't." "I know." Laura's voice cracked. "But she doesn't understand why you left." "I left because you were right." Dante's grip tightened. I brought danger to your door. Everything you said was. I was terrified, Laura interrupted. I was angry and terrified and I said things I. She took a shaky breath. You could have left us, after that first night. But you didn't. I couldn't. Why? Dante closed his eyes. Because when I heard her voice on that phone, I heard my daughter. And when those men came for her. His voice broke. I would burn this entire city down before I let anyone hurt her. Laura's breath hitched. I don't know how to do this, Dante continued. I don't know how to be around people without destroying them. But I know I can't walk away. Not from her. Not from you. Silence. Then Laura's voice, soft but steady. Then don't. Dante was at her door in 4 minutes. Laura opened it before he could knock. They stood there, inches apart, the weight of everything unsaid pressing between them. I have conditions, Laura said. Anything. No more men surrounding my house. No more black cars. Dante nodded. Done. You don't make promises to her you can't keep. I won't. And if this puts her in danger again. Laura's eyes glistened. You leave. Immediately. Dante met her gaze. You have my word. Laura searched his face for the lie, the crack, the danger. But all she saw was a man trying desperately to be better than he was. She's been waiting by the window, Laura whispered. Every night. Dante's chest tightened. Can I see her? Laura stepped aside. Rosie was curled on the couch, Mr. Whiskers tucked under her chin, her eyes red from crying. When she saw Dante, she went completely still. Then she launched herself off the couch and ran. Dante dropped to his knees just in time to catch her. She crashed into him, her small arms wrapping around his neck, her tears soaking into his shirt. You came back, she sobbed. You came back. Dante's arms closed around her, his eyes squeezing shut. I'm sorry, Piccolina. I'm so sorry. I thought I made you leave. No. Dante pulled back to see her face, his thumb wiping away her tears. You did nothing wrong. Do you hear me? Nothing. Then why did you go? Because I was scared. The admission cost him. I was scared I'd hurt you just by being near you. Rosie's little hands cupped his scarred face. But you didn't hurt me. You saved me. And just like that, the last wall around Dante's heart crumbled. He pulled her close again, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs he'd held back for 3 years. Laura watched, her own tears falling freely. She saw it now. What her daughter had seen from the beginning. Not a monster. A father who'd lost everything, desperately trying to find his way back to love. 4 months later, the kitchen table, repaired and refinished, held 3 plates instead of 2. Rosie chattered about her day at school, her words tumbling over each other as she tried to tell both Dante and Laura about the art project she'd made. And Mrs. Patterson said it was the best one. She put it on the wall and everything. That's wonderful, baby, Laura said, smiling. Dante reached over and tousled Rosie's hair. I'm proud of you, Piccola. Rosie beamed, then suddenly hopped off her chair and ran to her room. She returned clutching a piece of paper, carefully folded. I made this for you, she said, handing it to Dante. He unfolded it carefully. It was a drawing. Crayon figures holding hands. A tall man with a scar. A woman with kind eyes. A little girl in the middle. Above them, in wobbly letters, My family. Dante stared at it, his throat tight, unable to speak. Rosie climbed into his lap, wrapping her arms around his neck. You're not sad anymore, right? He held her close. Not anymore, sweetheart. Not anymore. Laura reached across the table, her hand covering his. He laced his fingers through hers, and for the first time in years, Dante Caruso felt something he thought he'd lost forever. Peace. The wrong number had brought him to their door. But love had made him stay. That's today's story. If it moved you, please like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from in the comments. It means more than you know.